Eric Gunn to the show. What's up, Gunner?
What's up, Bill? How you doing, man?
It's good to see you, man. It's good to see you. For those of you who tuned into the pregame show on Jacob Sports or the postgame show, you know, me and Derek Gunn are down at the Ocean Casino every week having some fun before the games. Well, it hasn't been as much fun as it usually is because the Eagles are 2-0, but we're not as happy as we should be, Gunner. So tell everybody why they should calm down.
Well, we're never, Bill, you have to understand. So you're a newcomer to our group. We're never 100% happy, okay? We always see things that can be worked on and improved. But the fact that this team is not played perfect football, and for nobody has. But the good thing is this team is 2-0 with a lot of room for improvement, and they will improve. To what degree remains to be seen, but it'd rather be 2 up than 2 down. I mean, when you think about teams, Cincinnati's 0-2, although Cincinnati did start 0-2 last year. You know, there's a lot of offers out there, man, you know. People understand, people want to see what they saw last year. And everybody across, media platforms have tried to tell the fan base, what you saw last year is not going to be the same thing that you see this year. Defensively, you got a whole new component of defensive players. Offensively, as I've talked about all summer long leading into the season, coordinators have had all summer to study this Eagles offense. And you come out of the gate and you played the best of the best in Belichick. You play one of his disciples in Brian Flores. And now you're going to play another outstanding coordinator in Todd Bowles. So the road to get to where you want to go is not as easy as it was a season ago.
Yeah, but like you said, 2-0 is 2-0. So we will take it. But my question, though, is obviously the offense is a little off. And I know you mentioned they played Belichick and they played Brian Flores, but it's more than just the defensive coordinators they're playing. I mean, who do you think shares a majority of the responsibility here for the Eagles? Is it Sirianni? Is it Brian Johnson? Is it Jalen Hurts? Is it a combination? Why hasn't the passing game been as good as it's been back in 22?
Well, to answer your game is yes, yes, and yes. Now, to go a little bit further, if you look at both Minnesota and New England, what they did was they decided to play more secondary personnel to defend against the big play. And when you look at how the defensive ends have been playing them, last season you had a lot of DNs that were crashing trying to get to Jalen Hurts, which allowed him to either hand up the ball or step up and run. In this case, because the DNs are stopping, it is allowing the backers to fill lanes a lot quicker. That's why you don't see a lot of those open lanes anymore. You don't see a lot of the backers just floating out to the outside. When Jalen has tried to dip to the outside, then you see the pursuit go to the outside. The edge containment bounces off the tackle and pursues, and the linebackers looping around him to stretch Jalen Hurts out. That's why you've seen Jalen Hurts sit down a lot of times instead of trying to turn and get up the field. He's had a couple of called quarterback runs that have worked okay for him. But for the most part, after 2 games, the Eagles have to say, okay, they're attacking us in the RPO a lot differently. So now we have to counter. So they've had extended time off since last Thursday. They will have had 11 days off until they get ready to play this Tampa Bay defense. And let's face it, it is a good defense. When Tampa Bay is healthy, they are a very good defense. They went through a lot of injuries last year, which in part led to their demise, along with the offensive line. But Todd Bowles at the helm. The defense is healthy early in the season. It's going to make for an interesting battle on Monday night.
Yeah, they got some playmakers on that defensive side of the ball. That's for sure. But look, we know the offense is struggling for the reasons you talked about. And I went back and watched some of the all 22, and I don't really necessarily like some of the play designs either. But like you said, they got 11 days to figure this out. But let's jump over to the other side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. In the pregame show, Seth Joyner said to us he thought Christian Ellis was going to have a really big game. Mm-hmm. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles come out and they give Christian Ellis 4 defensive snaps. Did you find that surprising?
Yeah. Considering they went into that game with 3 outside linebackers and no true middle linebacker. But the fact that he got 4 snaps was a little bit perplexing. As to why, no one's really found out why. Was he hurt? Was he not 100%? Do they not trust him? Your mind can wander in 20 different directions in terms of the whys and why nots of what they think of Christian Ellis. Now, if it happens again this coming Monday night, the volume of questions and speculation are going to increase. the media guys, like I know them well in Philadelphia, they're going to start probing a little bit deeper. It's going to irk Sirianni. It's going to irk Sirianni the way it did when he was initially talking about the incident that flared up on the sideline with AJ and Jalen Hurts, or he's going to say, hey, look, guys, it's just a situational situation. Body language says a lot, in terms of how you respond to certain things, certain situations. So I'm waiting to see exactly what happens with the defensive scheme and how much Christian Ellis gets to play on Monday night.
Yeah, I was excited to see Ellis because when he's on the field, man, he's flying around. So I was expecting some big things from him against Minnesota as well, 4 snaps. But I will say, Nicholas Morrow, who wasn't even on the team week 1, was sitting down there on the practice squad, I thought had a pretty good game on Thursday night.
Yeah, he came in here as a potential starter on the weak side, no guaranteed money. And as training camp progressed, all of a sudden he's on the second team, he's on the third team, and all of a sudden he gets cut. Then he's brought back to the practice squad. So that initially tells you that Nicholas Morrow wasn't exactly what they looked for. When he came here, people were saying, well, look, oh man, he had 108 tackles. My question was, how many of those tackles were downfield? See, you can have 200 tackles, but if you're not making an impact at the line of scrimmage, or you're not disruptive in somebody's backfield, just how effective are you being at that position? So whatever he wasn't doing correctly, it got him demoted. Now, out of necessity, one man's injury is another man's opportunity. Now, out of necessity, all of a sudden he's elevated back again. And maybe that was a wake-up call for him. So he's playing without guaranteed money. He's playing for a future contract. And somewhere in his mind, he's got to be thinking, this team, I don't know if they really trust me or not. I've got to go out here and win their trust all over again. So he's got a proverbial chip on his shoulder, and it's understandable why.
Yeah, and people are asking in the chat if the Eagles are going to make a move at linebacker. There was also talks about as soon as Budda Baker was deactivated from the game, they're going to go get Budda Baker. He just went on IR. Yep. Are you hearing anything? I mean, you never know what Howie Roseman, are you hearing anything that he's going to make a move for either a linebacker or safety help?
Howie is always looking to make a move of some kind, but he's not just going to make a move for headlines. It's got to be something that fits what they're trying to do. And when you really think about it, Bill, there's not a whole lot out there to get right now. The Eagles have 12 or 13 picks coming up in next spring's draft. I don't see the Eagles drafting 12 or 13 players next year. So somewhere along the line, especially if players keep falling by the wayside, I can see Howie trying to bundle up some of these picks to get somebody he really wants. It may not be a frontline player. It may be like a GJ situation. Somebody who comes in here to finish out a 1-year contract. If the Eagles deem him worthy enough to try to keep, they'll make a push for him at the end of the season. If not, he'll serve a purpose for this season. But Howie's always looking. Do I know definitively who's he looking at or what position? No, at this time. But I know Howie well enough to know the man never sleeps. I said it jokingly time and time again. I think he hangs upside down like a bat just to recharge. And he's always constantly on the phone with somebody trying to find out, what do you have that you want to get rid of and what might it cost me?
Yeah, you talk about Howie Roseman too. He had such a great draft this past draft, and it was a little surprising to me that we didn't see one of those draft picks on Thursday night, and that was Sidney Brown. I know a lot of people were hopeful Sidney Brown was going to get more reps at the safety position with Reed Blankenship down. He only played 4 snaps. Mm-hmm. What do you think it is that's holding Sidney Brown back from getting on the field on that defense?
As athletic and as talented as he is, maybe the defensive coaches are telling us he's not quite ready to assume an expanded role. Everybody just fell in love with the kid when they saw him, making big hits in preseason games, so on and so forth. But you know what? He plays at such a high speed and sometimes with reckless abandon that maybe he has to be fine-tuned a little bit more. One of the knocks coming out of college was sometimes he over-pursues a play and he misses tackles, or he's always trying to make the big hit and he misses the definitive tackle. Those little traits can add up to big things at this level. So maybe they're telling you that right now, even with all the injuries they have, he's not right where we want him to be in terms of putting him on the back end of that defense. And, of course, after what we saw in this last game against Minnesota, they're going to have to rely on a lot of youth until they get some of the guys back. Nakobe Dean. Even Blankenship is not guaranteed. Blankenship is going to play Monday night because of this rib injury, usually with a concussion protocol. If they get Bradbury back, that's huge for Bradbury, especially matching up against the likes of Mike Evans on Monday night. We're not 100% sure Bradbury is going to be back quite yet. So they're going to have to rely on some of these young players, again, coming up Monday night. Hopefully, City is closer to being ready than not, because I do think before the season is over, he's going to have a much more expanded, definitive role on that defense.
Yeah, that's one of the concerns I had too when everybody was throwing the name Buda Baker out. As good of a player as Buda Baker is, I don't want to see a guy come in and stunt the development of either Sidney Brown or Reed Blankenship, because I don't know if Eagles fans are truly appreciating how good Reed Blankenship looked all preseason. Let's hope he's healthy as well. Have you heard anything about whether or not he's going to play on Monday night?
As of right now, it's 50-50, and here it is. It's only Tuesday. And when you have a rib injury, especially one that can keep you out of a game, you have to be careful how soon you put somebody back out on the field, because one good shot, again, the next game, and all of a sudden he's out 3 or 4 games. With modern technology being what it is and all these electronic stimulus and all this stuff, you can work those muscles back into shape and get that swelling and bruising down a lot quicker nowadays. But from a medical standpoint, the trainers and the doctors, you have to identify where it's located, number one, and if he comes back too soon, are we looking at the possibility of being out 3, 4, 5 games instead of 1 game or 2 game possibly? Luckily, the extended time gives these guys a chance to heal. Fletcher Cox had a rib injury. He played with it. Now, obviously, his wasn't as severe as, Reed Blankenship. But they're not going to put any player out there sooner rather than later. And let's face it, in a day and age where everybody's trying to get younger to get better, I still believe the Eagles have enough veteran presence on their defense to disguise some of the deficiencies they may have in other areas. Middle of the linebacking situation and on the back end of the defense, especially if Bradbury comes back. You got 2 Pro Bowl cornerbacks. You got Pro Bowlers in the trenches. So you got enough to get you through. Tampa Bay is not the upper echelon team, although they're off to a 2-0 start and they're playing well. Tampa Bay is not Kansas City, Buffalo, one of those teams, So you can get through another game without having all of your frontline guys.
Yeah, you just mentioned Fletcher Cox battling that rib injury as well. I asked you in the pregame if you thought maybe he wouldn't play as much because of that rib injury. Man, is he a beast. He went from playing 62% of the snaps against the Patriots, comes in questionable against the Vikings, and he plays 76% of the snaps.
Yes.
And I really think, tell me if you agree, the addition of Jalen Carter on this team has rejuvenated Fletcher Cox, saying, hey, look, I'm still the guy.
I think it's Jalen Carter. I believe it's Jordan Davis. I believe it's Milton Williams. Fletcher knows he's the elder statesman on that defensive line. He knows he's got 1 foot in retirement right now. That retirement rocking chair is starting to squeak a little bit for him. He understands that. But, sometimes when you have a bunch of kids around you, you want to get out there and prove that, you can still battle with these young kids. So I do believe the youth movement has motivated him. And, of course, he's a teacher of these guys as well. What's the best way to teach? By example. Learn by example. I'm not just going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to show you I can still do it. And because that rotation has been so well, it has kept him a lot fresher in games. Even though he's played 72% of the snaps, look at the way he's played, especially in the fourth quarter. We're seeing a fresher Fletcher Cox. Now, Fletcher Cox to me has made more noise in the fourth quarter in 2 games than he has earlier in the 2 games, and maybe it's because of that reason. Fletcher Cox doesn't have to play every down anymore, and the Fletcher Cox I know has always played through pain that has sidelined some other guys. So when he was out there, I wasn't surprised one bit that he was out there. The fact that he played 72% of the snaps, I was a little bit surprised, but Fletcher knew he needed to be out there, especially when the Vikings started getting a little bit closer. You need that veteran presence out there.
Yeah, and speaking of another veteran that's supposed to be a dominant force along that defensive line is Hassan Reddick, and he really hasn't done much in the first 2 games. Is that thumb injury affecting his ability to get after the quarterback?
I believe it is. What's number one? His speed is his first big trait. Number 2, when he attacks, you need those hands to extend, to punch those tackles on the shoulder pads and redirect them in a direction you want them to go so you can make you move the other way. I don't think the thumb is allowing him to do that, fully yet. And it may take a couple of more games before he's all the way back. But yes, when you fracture something like that, especially in the latter part of a training camp, it's not going to be 100% coming right out of the gate. Now, eventually it's going to heal, and eventually I expect to see the Hassan Reddick that we knew and loved from 2022. But I think right now that thumb definitely has an effect on how he attacks the shoulders of offensive tackles.
Yeah, and another defensive end that everybody was excited to see was Nolan Smith. He only played, I think, 6 snaps against the Vikings, 7 snaps against the Patriots.
Yeah.
Is he another guy like Sidney Brown who's just not ready, or is that shoulder injury affecting his ability to get on the field?
It's funny. I asked a couple of people in the know inside the organization. I said, "Hey, wait a minute. Nolan played 7 snaps in the first game and played like 4 snaps the second game. What's the problem? Is it his shoulder?" And the response I got was, "He's a great kid. His turn will come." So based on that, it's telling me it's not the shoulder. Ever since he jokingly made that comment, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. People have been closely watching this to see. And of course, then shortly after that, they kept him out of 4 consecutive practices. So people are wondering, is it the shoulder? From what I'm gathering, he's not ready yet to assume a bigger role, which tells you how far he must be considering Hassan Reddick has a thumb issue. He hasn't been able to attack the way we like to see him attack. And yet, instead of getting Hassan off the field a little bit more, they're keeping him on the field and getting Nolan Smith on the field less. So that tells me Sean Desai, Matt Patricia are not 100% satisfied with where he is right now in terms of technique and knowing his responsibilities.
Yeah, they don't have trust in these rookies, it looks like, outside of Jalen Carter, because when Avonte Maddox went down on Thursday night, a lot of people, again, calling, hey, it's Eli Ricks' time. It's who's the other corner they got? Keely Ringo. It's his time. Neither one of those guys plays more than 1 snap. Similar situation there. These guys just aren't ready to get on the field. They don't trust them yet.
I don't know if it's that could very well be the case, but you look at who they had on the field against Minnesota on the back end. It looked like the Keystone Cops running around back there, except for Darius Slay. Darius Slay has to take the onus of settling these guys down, as Malcolm Jenkins did when he had to go through that, like in 2018 and 2019 with a bunch of young players. Malcolm took him to a point and said, "Hey, look, I've coached you guys up enough. I'm not coaching you up anymore. Now it's time to let you go." I don't know if Darius Slay has assumed that same role that a Malcolm Jenkins did, but Darius Slay needs to coach these guys up and calm them down, and then you turn them loose. But this past game was a little helter-skelter. And because we don't know whose role will be defined and for how long, you've got to get that thing fixed. You can navigate through these teams you're playing like right now, the New Englands, the Minnesotas, and the Tampa Bays. But sure enough, you're going to face the Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes, the San Franciscos. And if you're going to be relying on these kids, you better make sure they're up to speed in a hurry.
Yeah, and we say they can navigate through them, but you look at what not Baker Mayfield. Let's hope he doesn't do what these guys did. But you look at what Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins did. Both of these guys looked like all-pro quarterbacks, putting up yardage, their completion percentage, touchdowns. Who do you think they're going to roll out there if James Bradbury's back at that slot corner position on Monday night?
Probably Job. Job will probably play the outside spot if they put Bradbury in the slot. It would definitely be Job on the outside. Now, again, if I'm an offense and I see Job out there, what am I going to do? I'm going to test him because he doesn't have a lot of game experience. A good offensive coordinator will identify in a hurry where the potential weak link is. And if that's the case, Slay is going to have Mike Evans. So on the other side, you're going to have Chris Godwin against Job and hopefully some help over the top. But their communications had better be on point because Chris Godwin can stick his foot in the turf and turn around and make you look bad on his highlight reel in a hurry. So, I'd be surprised if it's not Job. Unless Job has some type of injury we're not privileged to right now, that's the way I see him lining up if they decide to put Bradbury at their slot position.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about Monday night. Eagles are, I think, a 6.5-point favorite going in. You think the Eagles come out of there 3-0?
Yes. Yes, I do. Baker Mayfield has played extremely well the first 2 games. But Baker Mayfield is also a Jekyll and Hyde. He can play like a Pro Bowler one game and play like he's about to flush down the toilet bowl the next game. The one thing that he does better than Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins is he will scramble and buy time. He can scramble. He can get out and run. And he can run. He can throw on the move also. So they've got to be able to defend against that. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be able to run much. Although they ran pretty well this past game, I don't think they're going to be able to run with any type of efficiency against this Eagles defensive front. But because of those 2 wide receivers they have, If Baker has time to throw, he hasn't turned the ball over once in 2 games, which is unlike Baker Mayfield. So he hasn't turned the ball over. So he's obviously confident in the guys blocking for him. He's obviously confident in Mike Evans. Mike Evans, since he's been in the league, 9 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, and look at the numbers he just put up in the last game. So there's a chemistry there already between those two. But you cannot allow Baker Mayfield to stand in that pocket and pat the ball and survey the situation down the field, or it's going to be a closer game than it should be.
Yeah, Mike Evans, man. I was looking at his stats today. 9 seasons with 1,000 yards. I said, oh, is he on pace to do it for a 10th straight year? Now, he's on pace to have 2,000 yards receiving this year after the first 2 games he had. So he's concerning to me. Chris Godwin is concerning. The good news for the Eagles, the tight end position, which is a position they struggled with 2 weeks in a row, the Bucs don't really have a stud tight end like the Vikings and the Patriots did, thankfully.
No, but this tight end had a decent game this past game. And if I'm an offensive coordinator, I don't care who I'm lining up at tight end, I've got to test the middle of the field. That was the weak area of this Eagles defense last year when they were a dominant defense, and it's a glaring weakness on this defense this year. It's in terms of defending the middle of the field. So whether this guy's a Pro Bowler or not, you have to test him to give the Eagles defense something else to think about. Can Desai and Patricia devise a plan to defend better in the middle of the field? I don't know, especially if you're playing a lot of kids on the back end, because their heads are already going to be swimming as it is in terms of what's my assignment? Where am I supposed to be? Am I in the right place? Did I hear the right call? So on and so forth. So with that said, if I'm Tampa Bay, I'm dinking and dunking my way down the field until I found it exactly where I can attack with more efficiency.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the formula for them. But let's hope maybe we get Reed Blankenship back. Maybe we get who else is coming back from injury back there?
Bradbury,
James Bradbury. Because if Slay's on an island with Mike Evans, I don't know if I trust Chris Godwin up against Josh Jobe, but he didn't play horrible against the Vikings, but we will see. Now, last question for you. Turn into this Tampa Bay Bucs team again. That defense is better than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. Do you see this being the game where Jalen Hurts starts to look like the Jalen Hurts of old in the passing game, or do you think this Tampa Bay defense is going to be too good and they're going to be able to shut them down?
I don't know about shutting them down, but Todd Bowles, you can say what you want to say about Todd Bowles as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he's one of the most respected DCs in all of pro football. He loves to play that Tampa 2 defense where you have 2 high safeties, and he's got a trio of linebackers, I think, that are just as good as any trio of linebackers, with Lavonte David, Devin White, and Shaq Barrett. And then he's got Vita Vea in the middle, who's a 300-pound beast, just a beast in the middle. And you've got, Antoine Winfield in the back end. So they have talent across the board, and they're very active, and they're very good, and they're very stingy. Hopefully, with this extended time, the Eagles' offense has figured out some of the reasons why they have inflicted self-inflicted wounds. But I don't think it's going to be easy right out of the gate. They're going to have to figure out what Tampa Bay is doing, and hopefully they can turn it on. It won't be as easy to run against Tampa's defense as it was against Minnesota's defense. The Eagles are going to have to earn everything they get in this game on Monday night.
Yeah, with Vita Vea sitting right there in the middle of the defense for the Bucs.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Well, D-Gun, I appreciate you making the time for us, my man. I will see you on Monday at the Ocean Casino. And, guys, you could check out D-Gun's show every day here on the Jacob Sports Network with Rob Ellis. It's called Sports Take. What time do you air, D-Gun?
Noon to 3, Monday through Friday. We had Mike Quick on today, and tomorrow at 2 o'clock we will have Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer, one of the writers that I have the utmost respect for in this market. Known him a long time.
Awesome. So, be sure to check that out, guys. If you're not already subscribed to Jacob Sports, give us a like, give us a subscription on it, and check out Sports Take every day with D-Gun and Rob Ellis. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to have Dr. Chris Radcliffe breaking down some of these injuries to hopefully get some of these guys back on the field. Stay tuned. D-Gun, I'll talk to you soon.